One person that we wanted to discuss is a young woman named Isabella Riley Moody. And this is interesting when you see this, when you have someone who is a member of a exploited group of women, and they're out there saying the exact same shit that these misogynists are making. Because listen, I haven't looked up the stats for Isabella Riley Moody's audience. I can guarantee you it's like 95% men. Like, women are not listening to this lady. But it's did you run across that when you were looking her up?
Sorry, my kids are like rollerblading behind me on the porch. I couldn't find a lot of her active accounts as of today, but I know that something pretty shocking. She just did something pretty shocking, so everything might be down. I did, or some of it might be down. What I was looking for, I did go looking for just that to see what kind of people were following her. I did find that a lot of like the responses I found on TikTok to her videos were women. It was women being like, "This bitch," you know. And then so. I would imagine that you're spot on. I couldn't confirm that today, at least, but I know for me, I don't have anywhere near the following that she has, and I don't even talk so concretely about what my beliefs, I guess, are politically. And if you're a female, I'm sure most of her followers are men. She's not an attractive girl at all. And this is the first person that we've covered so far, even like institutions included. I know that we're a very small podcast. We were just getting started. We don't have a whole lot of people listening just yet, but I hope to God that this episode finds its way to Isabella. And I am looking at you, baby girl. I would love to have a conversation because this is the most personal I have felt researching any of our subjects so far. I am so deeply and personally offended by this girl. I can't wait to continue talking about it. So, but don't look her up. We're going to give you some shit, okay?
Yeah. So, continuing on what Joel said about women not being able to vote, I ran across this clip of Isabella Riley Moody talking about how she doesn't think women should vote either. And we'll go ahead and share it with you guys here.
Worst things ever happened for America was women getting the right to vote in 1920. The 19th Amendment is a horrible thing because women overwhelmingly vote for Democrats because they are emotional thinkers, and the left knows how to tug on the emotional heartstrings of women, which is how they get their votes. And I'm sorry, men just know better. And yes, there are stupid liberal men that are pretty much women, but America would be way more conservative if it weren't for women getting the right to vote, which Republicans did, by the way. So freaking rhinos.
True. And ideally, you would marry someone who was on the same page as you politically and did have the same values. So it's like your vote essentially would be counting for two people. So it's not honestly like the worst thing in the world.
So, yeah, I just have to wonder what's going on here, because like I can see the men saying this. But then the women's like, well, even she said in that clip that, like, listen, well, men are just smarter. Men know what they're doing, so we shouldn't do this either. And I have a hard time imagining saying something like that when you're a member of that antagonized group, because I couldn't picture a scenario where I said, well, listen, having black people vote is hurting the nation, so we should just take it away because, white people know what they're doing. We have no fucking clue what's going on. And yeah, like, I don't think her goal here is to attract more, a female demographic to her content. Her goal here, and you see this a lot in conservative media, is that you have views that are espoused by mainly old men. Like that's the demographic that believes in this stuff. And there's no better way to get old men to pay attention to your content than having a young hot chick saying exactly what they think, and they will flock to it. And then, like you said, they also, not only do they do that, it's like, oh God, this girl who I would love to bone one day, but agrees with everything I say. That's fantastic. But like what you said, Kayla, is my daughter needs to hear this. Like my daughter is like a weird progressive, and she's rejecting all this. I wish my daughter were like this. Like this would change her entire life. And so that's what I think she's going with this, because, and we'll get to that a little bit later about how genuine she is, because I have a lot of stuff on that as well.
Yeah, me too.
And this one I'm gonna talk about is what I got here. About the woman's role. Not in politics, but the woman's role, domestically. Let's see. This is with her and her husband. I think his name is Josiah.
Mm-hmm.
Women, unironically, they need to find a man that's very misogynistic. If you at all want to have a guy that's going to like make you follow his frame, and you need to find a strong Christian man that's going to put you in your place, or else you're going to dominate the relationship. And when a woman dominates the relationship, it's destined for failure, because I see even how I was different, like in my previous relationship. I was dominating, and I was such a bitch, like such a Jezebel. And, I wasn't always like a good wife or like this great, or even Christian. I used to be atheist, but he has completely transformed who I am and how I act, because he's such a strong Christian man, and he doesn't let me get by on things. He always will nitpick everything, because he's literally training me how to be a good Christian wife. You need to be trained. Women are bitches, and they need to be trained. So that's my advice. Find a man that will train you. Like, to young women.
So, Kayla, I remember when I showed you this video a couple weeks ago, and you brought up something that I hadn't really thought of. You said that in a way you felt pretty bad for Isabella, because in your assertion, you saw someone who was just desperate to be loved by someone. And she was so in need of being accepted and loved that she would be willing to degrade herself like that, and just to feel that some sort of connection. And it was the first time I felt bad for her. I had never done it before, but I thought you made a pretty salient point there.
Yeah, I mean, I do think watching that video, I still maintain the anger, like I said, because I hear her basically like from a female, which I think can be really even more dangerous for young women. I remember hearing men say some of the same things that she just said as a teenager, and I knew, and I was just like, well, fuck you, you're saying that because you're a dude.
Right.
But I remember like some women that I thought were, beautiful, smart, intelligent, kind, like everything that I wanted to be, telling me essentially the same things. And that laid the foundation for me to be and I'm going to get really personal here, and I'm almost going to do this, but I have been in an extremely abusive relationship. I won't even say like which one or when where it was. But when I remember coming out of my very physically, mentally, emotionally, and very long abusive relationship, and a lot of domestic abuse survivors have this moment, but asking myself, how did I let that happen to me? Because I've always been a type A personality, a strong-willed young woman, even at the Haven, or in all of these experiences, like nothing ever broke that about me. And then I felt like I could not understand for such a long time after my abusive relationship, how me still being me after it, how did I do that? And this is a huge part of it. I had so many people that are adults that I looked up to or loved and trusted, and it was the women that were the most, like I said, influential in this area, but lay the foundation that abuse is okay. I don't think that her fucking boy child, Joe Child, whatever he is, I don't know, Josiah, is that what his name is? I don't think that he just nitpicks her. That is and probably any, domestic abuse survivors or advocates that will listen to this, like everything she said was a red flag. If I was sitting across a table at lunch from that girl and just met her, And she said some of these things, not even some of the political stuff, but like in particular, I keep thinking about her saying he nitpicks me. That's your nice, pretty word for whatever the fuck he's really doing, which is probably abusing you. And you know, that's your word for it. And I kept watching her watch him during that, almost like checking, like, this is right. Okay. She would look and then proceed. Like he was giving her that nod, like you're on the right track. And another thing, like, and I don't feel bad. I'm sorry. Like, I'm about to sound so much more judgmental than I think I am by nature or choose to be in normal conversations. But I don't feel bad about it here because this girl is a full adult who had obviously like had plenty of other time in her life to explore other theologies or belief systems. She was previously an atheist. So I have no shame like going for this girl here, but she's a beautiful girl. I just don't even the need for love and the point that we talked about there in the beginning, it has to be so deep because not only is she getting up here and putting her foot in her mouth on the internet, but just looking at the two of them. I'm just saying, like, girl, you don't have to do all that. You don't have to do that. You can be smart and not get nitpicked. And you can take care of yourself, not with your life choices now. Like, you're going to have to hit the ground, hit rock bottom, and like unlearn everything. But yes, like she's very, I do feel bad for her too. And that's how it will not get better for her. Somebody said something to me when I was getting divorced and talking about like the beginning of my relationship. And they said, you know, a relationship's never going to be better than it is in the beginning. So take and the beginning can be in so many different contexts. It's however you look at it. Maybe it's the first month if you're looking back, or maybe y'all have been together for 10 years and it's that first year. But she's young. He's obviously like, I would like to see his driver's license and his marriage certificate just to make sure that this is all across the board. But they're very young, and this is the best that their marriage is ever going to be. So I'm going to watch Isabella for years to come, whether she stays in the main light or not, because I don't think this is going to work out for her long term the way she's feeling like it is. But there's
if two crazy kids like that can't make it, I mean, what hope is there for
two people like that absolutely hate that their lives stick it out till death? So maybe I'm wrong. She seems very hard-headed. So that's but how many people have to tell you around you that like there's a different way? There's a different way.
Yeah.
It ain't that way.
Yeah. And so Isabella is incredibly sexist and incredibly misogynistic, but fret not, because she's also fairly racist as well. And so
and not only that, TJ, she also doesn't like fat people. I got some more notes for you too, but like she just hates anybody that's not white and small, like her and her husband, apparently.
So I got a clip here, and she's talking about white Christian nationalism and saying that the Republicans are making a mistake because they are trying to distance themselves from the category of white Christian nationalism. She's like, no, you should actually hold on to this. So let's see what she says here.
Republicans should embrace this. You know, I'm so sick of Republicans trying to shimmy away and shy away from the whole narrative that we're white Christian nationalists. No, that's what the Republican Party should be. We should try to go back to our traditional roots. America is a white Christian nation, and it's okay that we want to maintain that nation. We want to maintain what the country was founded on. Let's embrace this. Let's stop letting the left attack us. Embrace the attacks. They always call us racist. Okay, fine. I'm racist. Actually think
one thing that's interesting,
thinking like, why didn't that host interrupt her or like ask more questions? But I'm sitting here now at the end of it, I'm like, you can't even talk to that.
Well, because they agree. Like she goes on like Newsmax and One America News and like far right wing networks. They agree with her. They're not going to jump in and contradict her because they agree with everything as well. And I was just really amused at the end where she's like, yeah, you want to call us racist? Yes, we are. Because if you read the writings from slave owners in the American South, or you read listen to the speeches from segregationists in the mid 20th century, you would be hard pressed to find anyone to say that they are racist. They don't say it. They never say they hate black people. They say, well, listen, I love black people. Like, black people are fantastic. They're very loving and kind. They take care of my children. They cook our meals. I only want what's best for them. But the races need to be segregated, and it's not proper. It's against the Lord. And so, like, even the people who everyone in the country would say, yes, that person is categorically a racist, never came out and said they were racist, and they never came out and said they hate black people. She's doing that. Like, she's actually worse than they are, because like she's like, yeah, fuck it, I am racist. And that's what I found pretty interesting about that.
Well,
How about yourself?
I think it comes back to your point, which you made to me and Kai, I think off recording, was that this girl is just clickbait. Her husband and everyone around her that she is out here looking like an absolute idiot for, they know it. She might know it, but I wouldn't be willing to bet she's probably the only one that doesn't. But she probably does too. I don't know. It could go either way. But they are putting her on these platforms. They are interviewing her. She is saying these outlandish things just to, you're right, like, save this dying belief system. Because at the end of the day, what you just read was people describing other people like animals, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, these African Americans, we love them just like we love, probably the dogs that were on property back then, and we want what it's the same way I would describe like my love for my animal is what I'm saying. So, fuck you if you think that. Because at the end of the day, if you were born with one of these dumbass skin suits and a consciousness, you qualify as a human, and you should have this. We should all have the same rights. I mean, it's just, I wonder, and I'll wonder it out loud here. Are they doing it? Do they want these clicks to, are they really gaining more people this way? Or is it just like warfare to like piss off the other side, who can also get fucked, by the way? If anyone's wondering what my political views are, I hate everyone, okay? But that, I wonder, like, what really, the person who is, kind of running the shots on Isabel and her husband, because I really don't think it's either of them, but the person who sees this big picture and sees that, the people are clicking on it, are just clicking on it because it's, shocking. Like, what is that person's end game here? And I do think I know the answer, but the complexity, or not, I know a simple answer, and I'm not going to say it on the air because it's political, but I wonder, I know that there must be more complicated things to that too. So it's eerie almost.
My guess would be that, yes, it's correct that they know it's rage bait. They know that people are going to see this, they're going to share it, and that'll drive more engagement and make them more money. Absolutely. But you have to wonder, like, because the question is, like, do they really believe it? And the answer to that is, it doesn't matter. It doesn't. If they believe it or not, it doesn't matter, because the effects of what they say are what actually matter. Now, I don't give a shit what's in your heart.
Carla always does a good job at saying this when she's with us, but how the impact, like, someone can say something and then the ripple effect of just something coming out of people's mouths.
Yeah. And
you're exactly right, because this is hate speech. Like, this is hateful. It's ignorant. It's hurtful. And I look just like her, like, I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I have, other than the fact that I'm a woman, like, obviously I do have a reason to be offended by her, but I'm not one of the biggest people who have, reason to be offended by her. And it hurts me. So I can't even imagine being a young adult, African American, obese, or transgender, all these people that she keeps going after, and just like scrolling TikTok and having to accidentally hear that. Like, make your own social media platform. Go somewhere else. Isn't that America? You said America was founded by white people and it's supposed to be all for white people. And yeah, but we came here from another country, and allegedly, if that's the truth, like, why don't y'all go do it again? Let's try in space. Why don't we start there? Titanic. I heard they're taking tours.
I know, but God, that's a funny story too that they're doing that. I can't believe they're doing that shit again.
Yeah,
that's so fucking funny. Oh God, I look. I'm not a praying man, but I will pray to any deity that does a double take on the Titanic and wipes out a few more billionaires. That would be. I will dedicate my life to that deity. But the thing with this is that a lot of times I'll get into discussions and people will ask, well, are these folks bad people? And my answer is I don't care. I don't care if they're bad people. It's because what happens a lot of times is that, like, say, like, we were talking to Israel, someone was talking to Isabella Riley Moody, and they said, well, hey, Isabella, you're a racist. And she would say something like, oh, well, no, I actually love Black people and Hispanic people and everything. And the conversation immediately shifts from the actual content to defending her personal character. I do not give a fuck about her personal character. I care about the consequences of her actions and her words. And that's a mistake, because people have this thing in which racism is just a personal moral failing. It's like, okay, that's a bad thing to do, and so you're like, well, the person never said they were a racist, so they're not. And it's like, well, no, like, if your standard for racist is someone who wears Klan hoods, okay, good, you're not going to find a lot of racists. But when you look at, hey, this person is propagating or proposing laws, policies, cultural standards, and mores that have a disproportionately negative effect on minority groups. Yeah. That's the racist part.
That's the racist part. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. And to the extent of, like, does she actually believe this? I would have leaned toward no until I saw this. And I'm going to share this with you guys here. This is an image of Isabella and her husband's baby. She's like 8 months old. And they kind of like taught her to babble the N-word. And then they recorded it and put it online. And when you're doing that, like, when you're actually, your kid is not part of the business here. It's a literal baby. And so doing that to your child, it kind of makes you think you really do believe this. Like, it kind of makes like what choice could I possibly, like, what conclusion could I possibly come to when you're willing to say, all right, this is something this isn't a bit, but I'm going to bring my kid into this and, like, warp the kid's mind into thinking racism is cool. Well, so go ahead.
Well, I was just going to add to what you're saying there. This is a strong opinion, but my strong opinion, that's fucking child abuse.
Oh, yeah.
You are a public figure, and you did that by choice. And whether your kid likes it or not, they are going to have to deal with all this shit that you put online during their adolescence for the rest of their lives. Right. And not only that, now you've attached their face to it. Right. And I know that child is going to grow and change, but this child we're talking about, like, people's rights and babies' rights and shit like that. Like, this is not a baby that has a fully developed brain and can give you consent to make it a racist online forever. And that's what she just did to her child. And in my opinion, this is child abuse. That image right there, in my opinion, is enough for those parents to lose their children. So, and let's talk about that even, like, on a surface level thing. Like, let's say that they do believe it. They're super racist. And in their home, there is absolutely, like, nothing wrong with the N-word, right? Okay, fine. But fine. But that little white child, whether they like it or not, is going to have to go out into this world and My kid is going to rock that kid's shit the first time they hear the N-word out of his mouth or her mouth. I don't care. Like, and it might not be my kid, but there's going to be other, kids coming up out of this.
There will be a line. There will be a line.
We're going to have no fucking tolerance for it, So you're putting your child in so many different layers of danger. Let's not even talk about like internet danger and blah, 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 whatever. But yeah, so my heart broke for that child first when I saw that image. Shame on you, Isabella, as a fucking mother. That haunts you forever. Okay?
And Isabella's going to be that kid's mom forever. Like the kid can't separate that. Like there's no, like, no matter what happens, like, oh yeah, that your mom is the racist bitch. Like that's what's going to happen. And yeah, it's like, there was a news story a while ago, several years ago, I remember. And there was a couple that had a child, and they named the child like, Adolf Aryan or something like that. And like it went to court or something. Like and it's like, no, you can't name your kid that. And there aren't like a whole lot of rules. Like you can pretty much name your kid whatever you want. But when they did that, it's like, no.
Has no choice until he's 18. And then even when he's 18, he has to pay a enormous amount of money to fix that shit.
Yeah. And so like it's interesting that you can just do that. So yeah, you can saddle kids with this, and I agree. I think it is child abuse. Yeah. So you guys may not be surprised to hear this, but not only is Isabella a sexist or a misogynist and a racist, she's also a transphobe. I know that probably caught you off guard, but this is something I saw a couple years ago of her talking about trans issues, and let's see what she has to say.
Transgender are clearly severely mentally ill, and you see a woman that's severely mentally ill, like in Nashville, getting pumped with testosterone, probably not a good mix, as we saw. And especially also another factor is the media hyping up this so-called trans genocide, which I wish was happening. It's not.
So disavow! By the way,
I'm kidding. Joke. You can't trust anything I say. I'm always joking. People that are like
all right. So she says that, they're hyping up this trans genocide thing. I wish there actually was a trans genocide going on. And the other host did freak out. He's like, oh no. He's like, oh, I don't want to disavow. And then she said, oh, I'm always joking. What was the joke? What's the joke there? Like, I'm curious. Like, go ahead. Say what?
Since when do we joke about genocide? Like, I'm waiting for any joke about genocide to be funny.
Yeah. And what's the structure of the joke? Like, what's the punchline? Like, actually, genocide is funny. I don't really understand it at all.
She's constantly. I watched a lot of her footage, and like I said, when we were talking about how she looked over her husband, she is constantly like testing her own peer group and the people around her for like, do you guys want me to go a little further? So I think that that's a good example of exactly what we saw in the last video where she was checking her husband. She doesn't know. I don't think Isabella knows how far they want her to take anything. And I don't think they know either. They want it to continue as long as she's continuing to get these interviews or people are continuing to watch, but she does not know what she's saying. She's just saying stuff and then looking around and reading the room, and the room is full of like her people, and those are the people who vote on whether or not she's proud of what she says. And I can tell you that just from like watching her communicate.
What is the dynamic that you picked up from her and her husband specifically? Like what do you think is going on there? Because it's pretty weird.
Yeah. There were some moments that I thought that they like seemed normal. I planned on, after today's episode, actually trying to research Josiah and Josiah's family more, because what it looks like to me is, if I had to bet, I know nothing about them. So if I'm right, I'm going to be very happy, but I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that Josiah comes from a very large and powerful, fundamental family. And I think that Josiah is probably just like her. I don't think that even Josiah is like the one really encouraging her or influencing her. I think it's his, if I had to guess, his family, just based on some of the things that she said about her life and her family. But I think that he sucks. I'm careful. I'm trying to be careful here, but I maintain what I said earlier. Like, everything about their relationship looks abusive to me. And that's weird. Even when I say it just now, I'm like, dang, because she is so, you can tell she's got a big personality too. So I do wonder about Josiah as well. And I really can't like put my finger on like how or what Isabella could be doing in this dynamic, what's feeding there, but there's a lot of weirdness between the both of them. And also I don't know their ages, but for somebody who sits there and preaches that her man needs to lead her a lot, if you watch any of her content with him when they're not like at the microphone, like specifically talking to their audience, when they're just having like these more like intimate moments, I think, between themselves or the people around them, like, she's daddy. She's given daddy to me. So it doesn't, the only moments where I see her, really like meet what I think is the correct criteria for a meek and mild wife are in those moments where she's speaking and preaching at their listeners and she's checking over to him. Is that good? So I bet there's like a brother or dad or something like that Isabella's really head over heels for, something that's like, telling them both what to do and how to make this look right and sound right and feel right or whatever. I'm not saying that she loves her husband that much.
So I kind of have a similar vibe because I think her relationship with her husband is an act. I think it's an act. I'm fairly certain of it. And I have a couple videos where I think, because there's a video, let me see, make sure it's the right one. This is an interaction when they're talking about something they disagree on, and he puts her in her place. So let's check this out here. I'm gonna make sure it's the right one.
What are you saying?
How do you respect a man who's gonna go cry on stage about you?
He didn't cry. His voice cracked. He was getting emotional.
Okay, maybe
if that was me, that means you cheat on me?
No.
That means you're cheating?
No.
Shut up. You're so stupid. That is ridiculous.
No, soft.
Quiet. Thank you. What are you saying?
How do you...
I don't believe that was real. I don't. I don't. Like the immediate way she turned like a robot or something like that. That's not like I don't think that's a normal reaction when something like that happens. Even if you're like,
fake, which I do think is the most likely. Or I will tell you, I just want to give this caveat because if, he was, if he was like physically abusing her, just looking at the two of them, like, I feel like she would definitely having to allow that. But there are circumstances where, you like animals, if you kick a dog enough times for saying something like that, they will, even women, people, whoever, human beings, children, they'll respond like that. They'll just, like, oh, like that's a cue. But I do think that you're right. It was absolutely fake because I have watched more content of them having similar little spats that were less perfect, less whatever. And rather than when he says stop or be quiet or all these like abusive verbiage that he's using, all this abusive verbiage that he's using with her, she responds like, you can tell she's annoyed. She's annoyed. So that was very performative, and that's just based on like consistency of their content that I have seen. Yeah,
I agree. And I think it's an act, and they're trying to like push this message through. And so this is another clip of him and her talking. And in this video, he talks about the concept that, sometimes uh, he's magnanimous enough to admit that, sure, sometimes the husband can go a little overboard, and if that happens, this is his proposed solution.
You do what you're supposed to do, whatever I tell you to do, because that's your job, is to submit, do it with a smile on your face. I don't care. And I wouldn't have let you leave. I would have, you would have had to eat whatever mean things I would have said. And then the job would have got done. And then afterwards, after the cooling down process, I would have, repented to God and smoothed things over with you for the sinful behavior. That's how things would have went down. I wouldn't.
So what's interesting about that to me is something that I've noticed a lot with people involved in this movement is I wrong you in some way, and after it's done, I apologize to God. Like that. Like my chief concern is making sure I apologize to God, not to you. I'll smooth things over. Go ahead.
The same thing, like that same portion was what caught my attention too, and almost like the flip side of that's your point is that being able to go repent for yourself or anybody is not a get out of free jail or like sin as much as you want card from my understanding of the Bible, but that is exactly how it sounded as he described that as well. Like, I'm not only I'm going to go repent for you. And yeah, my biggest concern is God and not your mental well-being or, the person that's like physically here doing their best, trying to like just get through a day. I'm going to go make sure God's good real quick. I know this is top on his list of all the things in the world right now. And then, but also, and it's fine that I abused you or spoke to you that way because I repented and you and God are good. So I'm going to need you to get the fuck over it. That's essentially what you just said to her or about her, and I don't believe that that's how their dynamic goes at all. No.
Yeah, and in the scenario in which that is someone's dynamic, all it means is I get to do it again. I can do it as many times as I want. Fuck you. I'm gonna take it up with the man upstairs, and as long as he's cool with it, I can just keep going with it. And it's like, it's an incredibly toxic relationship. And we see this a lot, actually. That this is like one of the reasons, like, we get into like my religious views here, that I find the concept of absolution to be morally reprehensible. Like, even with the sacrifice of Christ, and that all these people commit all these crimes, and they murder, they rape, they pillage, they insult, they demean, and you don't have to pay any price for that. Jesus did it for you. A man who did nothing wrong is taking on all those punishments, and you get to act like, oh, okay, well, I guess everything's fine then. I didn't have to do a goddamn thing. And it's like, no, that is one of the most immoral concepts you can possibly think of. Because let's say, like in A Tale of Two Cities, Sidney Cotton, he says, he goes to the gallows for another man's crimes, and he says, "'Tis a far, far better thing I do than I've ever done before," and he takes on that man's punishment. Okay, however, that man still did those crimes and got away with it. That's not justification. Like, it's not. Like, it's the exact opposite. You're punishing an innocent person for the crimes of a guilty person, and when that's the foundation of your belief system, why wouldn't you do that? I mean, why wouldn't you keep doing that? Because that's what it's all built on.
I'm really glad that you said this, because I will reference something I think I mentioned in episode 1 or 2. But I struggle with this concept, especially now that I have kids, because I think I said it in episode 1, but I teach my kids that sorry is an action word. So like when you say sorry, then it requires action, a change of behavior, change, or, if you hurt someone, go make it right, whatever. And I know as a parent, I have observed that is an important learning opportunity for my kids. Like, following through and making sure that they really do take some action right after they make a big mistake, especially if it's like involving other people, hurting a sibling, hurting. So, because I think that that's the closest analogy to what applies here. Like the things that they're doing and saying because they're doing it publicly are affecting other people. So I agree with you. And I don't understand because it's almost like God is, like took away the classroom activity or, the lab, I feel the same way. Yeah. And I'm not saying that like, that's it, that, makes it totally unbelievable for me, but I do think that, it was natural for me as a parent, and maybe this is unique. I could be wrong here, but I don't think this is unique. It was natural for me to, want to see my kids learn from those moments where they said they were sorry. I don't know any parent who wouldn't want to see their child like then do it, learn, So
right.
I don't, or to make things right. So if we are, created in God's image and he's so much like us and we have all these like natural inclinations for good like that, like you're right, then why would God just be like, yeah, it's fine. Like you don't have to, I don't want to see you like go make anything right. You don't have to like do better. He just died for everything. But I will say, because I'm sure there's Christians listening right now, like their brains are going wild. Like, oh my God, the Bible does say like you have to, go on and do all this stuff after. And I understand that. But there is, when you are just focusing on salvation and that part, like there's just this huge caveat, and not everyone is going to get to the other stuff in the Bible. So how do you make that work?
And you don't even need to do that. You could have been the Green River Killer and, you got caught, you got put in prison, and the day before your execution, you accept Christ as your savior. What retribution did you do at that point? Like you didn't do anything. So it is like, I don't know.
If we wave that magic, Christian nationalist wand, and then we were like a Christian nation that day, well, then what then, Christians? Do you execute him? He got saved.
Well, you're sending him to heaven. You're doing him a favor.
Yeah.
And you mentioned the unbelievability of this, if that's even a word, unbelievability. But yeah, it's true. It doesn't make any sense, or it's certainly not just. That's the thing. Like, there's no justification for this. It's like it's tacitly immoral, or explicitly immoral. But the unbelievable part to me actually goes a little further in that. So in this paradigm, we have God, like an all-powerful triune deity who spoke reality into existence, like unlimited power. He could do whatever he wants, whenever he wants. And he creates humanity, and then a problem emerges. Like, oh, we got sin. And I can't allow sin into heaven. I mean, I could because I'm omnipotent, but I'm deciding not to. So, all right, already a problem there. And so he says, I got to solve this problem because I can't allow people that have committed sin into heaven. So I need to find a way to solve this. I know. Here's what I'll do. I'll take my son, who's also me. There's a third guy, too. I'm sure that won't be confusing. But I'm going to send him to Bronze Age Palestine and have them torture and execute him, and then like a bloody human sacrifice. And that is what's going to solve this problem of sin.
Yeah.
You've got to be insane to believe that. I'm just like, you're like, so that sounds, now if you told me that was written by an Iron Age warlord, like, okay, that makes sense. Like that's something they would say. Yeah. But to an all-knowing, all-powerful deity, that's fucking nonsense. Like that, like you're telling me the God that created galaxies, that crafted solar systems, the God that holds the nuclei of atoms together couldn't come up with a better plan than getting having the shit kicked out of his son and executed to cover people's sin. Oh, and by the way, to get people to know about this, we're going to write it in a book. Never mind that this is to a population that has 90% illiteracy rate, so they can't read the book anyway. And it's even higher when you consider everyone in the world who doesn't read those languages. And by the way, we're not going to tell them about 2 whole continents on the other side of the planet. You would have to think God is the worst program manager in existence. And so it's the more you think about it, the less sense it makes. But
I know that I do have, before, I know we're about to wrap up. I have one little soapbox before we do. I know it's super important for you to share all that, and I don't disagree with you, but I'm going to pull a Kai, and I'm going to add a caveat in here, because while I really do, DJ, I struggle with those same thoughts. I mean, even less smart.
There's a good reason you struggle with them.
I know. I remember being a child and being like, well, why didn't God just not put sin as an option? Why was sin even on the menu board? Why couldn't we have free will? But he's really powerful. Why not just that's not there? Or I really struggle with language, and I'm glad you brought it up and how it translates into people's religious beliefs, because sin covers so much. And really, if we take the word sin and we look at it in Europe or other history of languages, or and this, I'm using the word sin instead of using words that I want to use because it's bland and easy, but there's so much language that it just doesn't make sense. And I remember struggling with that as a child. Now, I know that you're an atheist. I'm going to say I'm not. I'm really my religious beliefs are really, really personal to me because of my religious trauma. I don't really feel like I'm not even going to share here what I believe. But I will say for our listeners that I don't believe the same thing as you. So there's some diversity here. And I also want to say that I know for a lot of people, they know these things that we talk about, that we're discussing.
Right, they do.
Logical. I've had these discussions with people, and I just want to say that there is this core message in the Bible of faith. There are so many questions that can't be answered, and a lot of times the core answer that you'll get back is you just got to have faith. And I want to say to the people that are listening that still believe that there could be so much truth in here, that I think faith is so beautiful, and I often I envy it. I wish that I had something. There had been days in my adult life that I wished I had stopped thinking about religion at age 17 when I got saved. And I wish that I could have just followed it, because I look around sometimes at people and I'm like, wow, it's just so simple and it's so beautiful, and it's and some people have these beautiful lives just believing these really just little things. And we're I just on the podcast, we're not here to attack Christians. I'm mostly saying this too because I slipped up earlier and I said Christians instead of IFB, and I know how you feel about it, TJ, and I'm here for that too.
I'm gonna say, speak for yourself,
because we this. I think our heart here is to definitely create a space where a lot of people that believe different things and think different things and look different are talking about this one thing. So I love that you shared that. I have the same questions. And I think we need to do an episode 2 on Isabella, because I really think that we could get into the dynamic of.
There's so much more.
Yeah. Let's do another.
So, yeah, I have one more for Isabella. I'm not sure if I'm going to include it in the episode because, well, I'll tell you why. But I want to talk about what you talk about with the language thing. That's a fascinating one too, because the language one really. So listen, this is not necessarily an argument for atheism. It's not. It's an argument against the possibility of the Christian God. That's what it is, because it's it doesn't make historical or logical sense if you think about it. And it's for example, with sin or with language, because if God wants to get the most important message to human beings, who we are, why are we here, where do we go when we die, what is God's relationship with humans, those are the most important questions that we could possibly have answered. And God says, okay, I'm going to put it in a book. And it's in a book that like 3% of the world can read. And by the way, the people who can read are the rich and the powerful. So that guarantees that they're going to have control over how this is used. And yeah, that like if someone brought that proposal to you, say, no, that doesn't make sense. God could have just as easily downloaded the information into everyone's brain at the same time, the second they were born, problem solved. And also, the sin thing is funny too. So sin entered into the world because Adam and Eve ate from the tree. And it's like, at that point, it's like, God kind of set him up for failure there, right? He put him in the garden and said, hey, there's a tree here. Don't eat from
Don't
it.
touch that one. Like, again, I think about Bible stuff so much as a parent now, because like, is it not like kind of, is it not supposed to mirror, right? According to them. And I like, that's the last thing I would ever do.
Right?
Yeah.
If you have like a vase in your living room.
Another one that's kind of along the lines with Adam and Eve that my hairdresser brought it up to me last night, and she's a Christian, and I love having these conversations with Christians. I really just hope that people know that like we're not trying to offend you, or maybe we are, but I do love having these conversations. But she brought up to me a question that she had, and it was like, Cain and Abel are their sons, right? That's Adam and Eve's son, or was it Abraham's son?
No, it's Adam and Eve's sons, Cain and Abel. Yeah,
Cain and Abel. So there is this verse in the King James Bible, and maybe I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure I'm quoting it right. But where it says that Cain went out and found a wife. He went. Where'd he go? He went to Israel, right? He went and found a wife. And
he went to the land of Nod.
He went to the land of Nod and found a wife. If that's the first family,
yeah,
I'm confused.
It does
now. So I do.
Yeah.
There's so like there's obvious metaphors, right, in the Bible at least. Adam and Eve could not have literally been the first ones if their kid went out and found a wife.
There was already another town.
Yeah.
And they don't even bother to explain it. That's very weird, right?
Yeah.
And with the tree, there's a lot of weird shit with the tree, with the original sin thing. But like you said, if you have a kid and you have like an expensive vase or something you don't want your kid, the last thing you would ever do is say, hey, listen, whatever you do, don't touch that, because the kid's going to do it.
First thing both my kids are going to do. They're going to wait till I turn around.
Adam and Eve were literally born yesterday. Of course, that's what they're going to do. And so my question is, why is the tree there at all? Why? Like, why is it there at all? Now,
you made us. Like, why test us? Like, you're,
and you give a test that you know the answer to. You're God. Yeah. So, like, there's no point for the test.
We're gonna take that. One of us is gonna take that apple. Like, come on, God.
And so, like, my thought process has always been, okay, why is the tree there in the first place? I mean, okay, well, so, hey, maybe God is mandated to do this. Maybe there's some sort of divine handbook that he has to follow, and he needs to have the tree. It has to exist. Put the tree on the moon. Like, why are you putting it in the garden?
I'm glad you said that too, because I always had this fascination in my late teens and early adulthood with like dystopian fiction, teen dystopian fiction. I love that shit. I still honestly like it. But one of my favorite series was what's it called? Divergent. Okay, and have you ever seen Divergent?
I saw Divergent. Yeah. Yeah.
So they're like in Chicago, and the whole world, like I think it was like a nuclear bomb, and like all these people were living inside this fence in Chicago, or crumbled Chicago, and they sincerely believe that they're the last, of human civilization. And if you haven't seen Divergent, like, you're gonna want to go pause and watch it right now. I'm about to ruin it for you. But the whole thing is that eventually, at the end of the series, or mid-series, whatever, they find out that they were an experiment by the actual last survivors on the whole group of regular population. They were like, we want to see what these people do, given this information or this information, this influence, or how they respond in, or how they're going to survive. And I have wondered this, so many times. I feel like there's one of two options as far as like where the Bible came from, or where any man-made or religion came from, in my opinion. And I do really think that it's from powerful, educated people way back when who were laying the foundation for there always to be rich and powerful people, and really deeply understood people feel and and the ways in which people can be manipulated, and they did a great job on it if that's the case. And I'm not saying that's it, but I'm one of the two, or the other option is, and I think this is the closest I'll get to what I believe, but I do, maybe there is a creator and a God, and I think that we have exactly what he wants us to have. I mean, if there is a God and you wanted us to know, you're right, there were so many other ways he could have communicated to it. So what else could the Bible be if it is true and it came from God, other than a little game? And I think about things like Sims, right? Like what do we as humans do? Sims was huge, right? And that was just people getting on a screen and pretending to be God with little small peoples on a screen. So according to the Bible, we're created in God's image and all that stuff. Is it really so wild to think that does it really make God disappointing or anything less than what you want him to be, to know that maybe he's just watching us, maybe he's just seeing what we do, and we could potentially be. I know that the Bible says that God loves us, and I don't want anyone to get tied up there. I watch my kids do shit all the time. I love my pets. I watch them do shit all the time. And I know that maybe they're going to bump their head or they're going to spill something, and that's okay because I'm watching them figure it out. And I do that with love. So is it really so hard to believe that God, there is a God and he created us, and all of this is wrong. Those feelings that we get. And I think the feelings is what really pulls people in to man-made religion. It's that I feel this, I feel like I'm on a path all the time. I know I'm on a journey, and things happen for me or don't happen for me. And I know that there was some greater plan. I do believe that. So, is it really so hard to believe that that's it? You don't need a Bible. You don't need anything. You can just feel that and know that.
Yeah.
What if that's it? What if that's enough? And so I just really went down a whole thing there.
No. So I agree with pretty much all of that, because the reason that religions exist, for my theory on this, is twofold. First is that life is terrifying. And it was way more terrifying 100,000 years ago. We didn't know shit about fuck. We didn't know what the sun was. You could have been eaten by a tiger at any moment, and we lived in the African savannah in groups of 150, 200 people. You ran across another group of people, and okay, can we trust these folks? Are they out to get us? And I think one of the reasons religion survived is that religion is a bonding aspect for people. Because if I'm in a different tribe than you and we run across each other and we have nothing in common, there's going to be some tension there. But if we start talking and I say, well, I worship the moon god, you're like, oh my God, I worship the moon god too. Now we have something in common and we're going to work together, because other than that, what do we have? We're not related. We don't know each other. And the people who were more susceptible to that survived better than people who's no, this is nonsense. They were more likely to die. Yeah. And that's why I think it's so strongly ingrained in us. Yeah. And with God, and so you're like a deist aspect of God, that God's created the universe and is watching a movie, pretty much. He doesn't answer prayers or have anything ready for you. I have long had a theory that what if God is real and he's evil? Because everyone assumes that God is real and he's good. There's no fucking reason to assume that, none at all. Why would you just assume God is good? Because if you assume that God exists and he's evil, things start to make a lot more sense. They certainly don't make less sense. Like you start to wonder, hey, why are children born with bone cancer? You know, like why do we have tsunamis that kill hundreds of thousands of people who are just minding their own business? Like, why does life need to consume other life to survive? It's like, oh, that's right. It's because God is evil and he takes pleasure in our suffering. That answers a ton of philosophical questions.
It does. It's scary and sad to like like I said, I'm not a Christian, and my heart broke a little bit thinking about that. It made me like sad, but it does logically.
It does. It makes more
sense.
It makes more sense than God is loving, and we have all this. I gotta tell you, if I had to choose one of the two, it'd be that one. So yeah. And if anyone wants to say, well, if you don't think God is real, what's your standard for evil? That's a distraction, and you know it. Like Isabella Riley Moody clip. Okay,
now,
so
I'm gonna tell you one more thing about Isabella.
Okay, yeah. So this is another clip from. I didn't know if I'm gonna post this one anyway, but this is her talking about her homophobia, which we haven't touched on that one yet. So big shocker that she's also a homophobe. But yeah, just no introduction. Just watch it.
Are you being serious right now? You're going to say that our society is a homophobic dumpster fire? Our society literally puts on a pedestal and worships them like they're God. The rainbow flag is everywhere. We love it. We love it. It's such BS to say that we're a homophobic society, that we are a homophobic society. I wish we were a homophobic society, and that's the goddamn truth.
I have a question. I hope she hears this, and this is again me just talking to Isabella, just in case she ever gets on here. But like, are you on an opioid? I'm so serious. Everything about her just screamed opioid to me. But to the gay thing, well, she also, you know, like I said earlier, like she posted a TikTok too, kind of saying the same or similar stuff. She said that if you were obese, which by the way, like, I don't think that most people realize like the definition of obesity. It's a very, like, most of you are, most of us
are. It's
are,
like 70% of Americans are obese. Yeah,
we're all obese. It's a, yeah. So her opinion is that if you were, and she did specifically say obese. She didn't, I don't think she said fat. She said obese. If you're obese, you don't deserve to have an opinion, because if you can't even be trusted to stay healthy, how can you be trusted to have political opinions? First of all, Isabella, you're obese. If that's your standard, like, you need to get off the microphone right now. And that's not shaming her. That's just like per the science, like what qualifies as obese. Like, I'm looking at your girlfriend, your BMI is too high. But and now if you want to get off your microphone and sit the fuck down, I'll also tell you that that's fine. You're healthy, you're beautiful, you love your body once you get your shit together. But so I'm not saying it like that, but that just blew my mind too, because you can be obese and you can eat healthy and bust your ass. I work in the beauty industry, and so I have these conversations with women all the time. And this got under my skin for this reason. I feel like I spend all day long. Women come in, you know, to my place of work, and they make these negative comments about themselves and justifying why they had to come in today. And I spend all day long saying, like, no, like, that's fine. You know, you're beautiful. And so to then hear her turn around and be like, y'all can't even have an opinion, you know, girl, like, what? And same thing with the homosexuality. I just thought that was like, that was the obesity one I heard preached a lot, actually. Like, she is not the first person I heard say that obese people shouldn't have a voice either. And I want to say to everyone else, like, the people who do believe this stuff, who do you think they're going to go after when they're done with gay people and women? Because this mentality and having this energy and these habits in your life, they don't stop when your victim goes away. They will then have this same tenacity. I don't think this happened, but like, let's imagine that they did when all this stuff, they would have the same tenacity about obese people. And guess what? That's 70% of us. So what the hell are y'all thinking, you know, subscribing to this? It just does. If you do a chain analysis on literally anything these people say, you can't make it make sense. And I have a dear friend, a good friend, a guy friend that's a Republican, his family's Republican. He and I love to debate. And he knows that I'm not like necessarily a Democrat or left wing, but I think that Isabel does a great job, and I see it mirrored in other people that I try to have conversations with. They're just racing through objections, racing through shit. And there is no room for a full logical chain analysis on any single point. And if you try to do that, then it gets personal, it gets ugly, it gets I know very few people that feel so strongly like she does that I can just be like, can you pick one point and let's just talk about that? We can't do it, you know, and I just think it's interesting to see her race through shit too.